Okay, so I want to give you a minute to kind of plug anything that you've got, whether it's books, events, social media. I want to just get that out of the way first so people can find you. Where can they find you?
Where can they find me? I would go to my YouTube channels, Entrepreneurs in Cars, if they're interested in my podcast, the Unplugged Alpha podcast, which is on its own channel now. Amazon, of course, to get the book, which you were gracious enough to mention in your Instagram.
Yeah.
Those would be the main ones.
Okay.
I
Well,
don't need any more TikTok followers or anything like that.
well, so that's where I found you was on TikTok. I read Corey Wayne's book, The 3% Man,
Okay.
quite a while ago. And then I found the Come On Man podcast, and I think I found you on there, and therefore on TikTok. It was just this train of things that went. So, how did this all start for you? Like, how did you get into this space with men and trying to do the red pill, blue pill thing?
It wasn't intentional. It was because of chaos, because of a series of bad decisions that I made around business and women. And it was actually a recommendation from a friend at a men's retreat. I was at Ben Greenfield's house for a weekend retreat. And as you do with men in the morning having breakfast, you talk about life and women. And I opened the behind the scenes stories and what was going on in my life. And a guy was like, "Oh, you have to read this book, which will red pill you," sort of thing. And that's sort of what started the path for me. That was around 2017. And I happened to have a YouTube channel at the time, and people were they were interested in the stuff that I was talking about when it came to business and entrepreneurship. But every once in a while, people, because they seemed to value my opinion, wanted to hear what I thought about relationships and women. And one day somebody said, "You should do a video on the kind of women not to date," which I thought was an interesting topic suggestion. And I had a lot of experience there. And I just recently red pilled myself. So I started talking about that. And that's what I really became recognized for on YouTube.
And obviously, a lot of men had the same problems, right? When
Yeah.
you're talking about red pill, blue pill, that's obviously a matrix reference. Can you just break that down like basics? What does that mean?
Okay. So for the uninitiated, and I'm not a fan of the pill situation because there's red, blue, purple, black.
Right.
People keep inventing pills to colored pills to agree with their ego investments in life. It's as simple as, do you see like the code in the matrix? Like, do you see what really happens, behind the scenes, or are you sleepwalking through life like the masses, because most people are sheep.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really what it means. It's like, are you unplugged from the matrix and awake, or are you plugged in the matrix and sleepwalking through life? And that's what the red pill, blue pill thing is.
Okay. And I would say that feminism has played a big part in that. I think the feminist movement probably started out really great, and those intentions were wonderful with getting equal voting rights and all of that, but it's gone too far. And one of the quotes from your book that I love says, "Femininity is undervalued. Feminism doesn't seek to make women better or more feminine. Feminism seeks to make women into terrible versions of men." And I talk a lot about masculine and feminine on this podcast. So what does the healthy feminine look like to you?
Well, there's like the green flag side of things and like the red flags, green lights, red lights, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I find it easier to help guys when I'm dealing with them, more specifically on what to avoid. So what not to do. So I think that if you start with that, for the most part, you're not going to invite a tremendous amount of chaos into your life. So I tend to approach things that way. I mean, that's why I have a chapter in my book on red flags to avoid with women, sort of thing. So I mean, if you want to talk about that stuff, we can get into things like that.
Yeah, I loved the red flags. And actually, some of them were a little hard to hear because I'm like, "Yep, that's me." And that's me.
How do you deal with
But
that?
um, I sit with it and I'm like, okay, well, why does that trigger me a little bit? Like, what is he saying when you talk about women that have tattoos? Um, I can see why that would be a red flag, especially for men who are trying to find a feminine woman. Like, the
Because I mean,
big
you've got the
one,
tats, you got the boss bitch thing, you got the single mom thing.
Yeah. So, but going into the dating thing. So once I got divorced, going into the dating thing, I was like, I'm the woman. I know what I want. I'm the boss. I don't need a man.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then I was only attracting betas,
Mm-hmm.
and that wasn't what I wanted. So I had to figure out how to trust a man to be the masculine, give him the space to be the masculine, and step back
Mm-hmm.
and fall into my feminine. And that's when I found a masculine man who doesn't put up with my bullshit. And that's exactly the kind of man that I wanted. But nobody tells us that. They tell us, take care of yourself and don't depend on a man, all of the toxic shit.
Sorry, I should turn off my ringer.
That's all right.
And actually, the audio clipped for about 4 seconds there. You and I lost our connection, so I didn't hear what you said. So probably go back about 10 seconds and let's re-record that part.
Okay.
Sorry, let me just turn off this ringer so it doesn't go off again.
You're good. I think there's so many contradicting ideas out there when they tell women to be independent and self-sufficient, and then we don't need a man at all, and it completely eliminates them from our space. But we want a man, and we only end up getting the wounded or the betas, and that's not who they should be in their best form either.
I would agree. Yeah, the sexual marketplace is very messed up. There's a lot of weak men. There's few strong men. There's strong men that have a difficult time, maintaining strength and frame in relationships because women inherently test a man's frame to see how strong it is and if he's competent enough. And it's what often puts guys through the process of betatization through 1,000 concessions. So it's very, very difficult out there to maintain a long-term relationship. I've had loads of conversations with guys that are looking to move from dating to long-term relationships. And I always tell them, if you haven't mastered dating, like if you don't know how to date, if you don't know how to deal with women on a short-term basis, you're going to suck at dealing with women on a long-term basis. Like it's game on hard mode, right? So yeah, there's a lot of complexities around that narrative.
Yeah, well, a lot. And one of those that I think complicates things is one of your red flags, and that's daddy issues.
Right.
In so many families nowadays, the dads are not present because of divorce or whatever else is going on. And so it's feeding the cycle of now women who don't respect the father in the home and in their what should be their frame as well, because they don't know that figure and therefore pass that along to their kids. They're okay with the dad not being in the picture. I don't know how we stop that cycle one relationship at a time is what I've come to think. But so you have a daughter, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have a son and a daughter. And so that's where I find your stuff really interesting, because as a mother of a son, I don't want my son to get fucked over. I don't want him to go through all of this and then all of a sudden maybe get divorced and not have access to his kids and be, run over the coals financially. What is the best advice that you will give your daughter down the road?
Well, I think daughters and sons are different. So do you want to talk about boys first, since you've got a son?
Yeah, let's talk about boys first.
Okay, so is his dad around?
Yes. Well, so we have them 50-50. So we're each in their both.
Yeah. So encourage his father to spend as much time as he can with him and do, masculine things, teach him masculine pursuits. Boys have to learn relationship models from their fathers. They're not going to learn from their mother. If they try to learn it from the mother, that's what creates a lot of betas today, right? Like single mother households I hate to say it, they're beta factories. Like most kids that come out of single mother households, the boys are quite weak. Most of the one-on-one consults that I do, when guys do their like Batman origin story, it's always, I grew up in a single mother household. Either she divorced him or he died young or something like that, but they didn't have a strong masculine man. So that's the key thing with boys. I think there's a great author which women should check out if they are mothers, which is Dr. Leonard Sachs, and he's got quite a few books on raising boys and girls, because the model is very different. So if you want more resources, I would go there.
Okay.
As far as daughters, the narrative with women is totally different, because a woman's value is based on her beauty, right? women want high value, successful men. Yeah.
Yeah.
Strong, virtuous, can make it rain, know how to make money. They're competent. They're not going to put up with bullshit. They can lead. They just want that kind of guy. And despite what, the toxic feminist narrative tells women, they can pretend to want some, female ally that wears a pink pussy hat and marches with them on Parliament Hill and waves signs about, like abortion rights and all that sort of stuff. They don't want to bang those guys. They want to bang the firefighters, the army dudes, like, the guys that look like that. Right. So right. The thing with girls is if you want her to find her ideal man, the key thing is you have to constantly remind them. And I think it's very, very tough in the world that we live in today, because society constantly is trying to remind women to be more promiscuous and take risks that compromise their value as they get older. A woman is concerned with a man's future. A man is concerned with a woman's past. So if she's been around the block, she's made some really bad choices in life, a high value guy will typically, if he's unplugged, will pass on a woman like that and, look for somebody that's a better mate choice over a long-term basis. So like, there's a lot of conversation to have, but it really just boils down to that main thing. And that's not me saying that. That's me collecting evidence from evolutionary psychologists and from a lot of very, very smart people throughout history that have drawn the exact same, conclusion about why men and women mate select each other.
It's going to be hard trying to raise a daughter, and she's going to be getting so many other influences through social media and her own friends and doing their own thing. And that's why I'm like, how do I keep her feminine, but still, I think it's important for women to have their own source of income. I think if you're going to get into a relationship and eventually a marriage, you should have, if you're getting a marriage license, there needs to be a prenup. That should just be automatic. It's a business.
Well, that's two different conversations. So let's talk about marriage, right? Because if I had a son, I would tell him not to get married. If I had a daughter, I would absolutely tell her to get married. It's two totally different conversations. Oh yeah, 100%.
Interesting.
Why would you want to encourage your son to put his financial wealth at risk, especially if he's going to be successful, in an environment where the law hates men? Right.
Well, and that depends on the state that you're in, definitely.
Right. So if you have a daughter, you want the best for her. So yeah, of course you tell her to encourage to marry the guy.
How does that work then? Then who's she supposed to find if you encourage the men not to?
Well, hopefully she listens to her father and does the right thing. And, she finds a guy kind of like him, right? Successful, right. Competent, does the right things in life, sort of stuff. Right. Then you tell her to be the wife, to be Mrs. whatever. Take his last name, take the attitude and the toxic feminism and the boss bitch stuff and, put it in the trunk and forget about it.
Okay. That's interesting. One of the other terms that you use a lot is hypergamy. Mm-hmm. Can you just explain what hypergamy means? That was the first time I'd ever heard that term before.
Yeah. First time I heard it was 2017. And all that really is just a definition of women's sexual strategy, which is only pair bonding with somebody that's of a equal or higher socioeconomic status. So I take these call-ins on my show. I don't know if you ever watched the Unplugged Alpha podcast, but I had this guy call in on Monday this week, and he was 36. His girlfriend was 46. She was an entrepreneur, successful, many multiples more money. And one of the conversation pieces that came up was she wanted him to start his own business so he could make more money, because he was only making $200,000 a year. She made several multiples higher. What he didn't see is that she's not happy with that. He doesn't understand that women are hypergamous. And, for her to be happy, for her to wake up in the morning and look at the guy and be like, yeah, this is the best that I can do. Because that's all that hypergamy is. You want to wake up, you want to look at your boyfriend, you want to get a text from him and read it and think to yourself, yeah, this guy's like the man. Yeah. Right. As soon as you look at that guy and you're like, he's not anymore, then that's when women tend to wander. So there's a lot of guys that obsess with hypergamy and women will never be loyal to you and blah, blah, blah sort of thing because of it. But it's a loser's mindset, and they generally take the wrong approach. I mean, if you recognize that women want to be with the best version of a male that they can possibly get, why not be that guy? Why not learn how to make money? Why not stop being fat? Why not develop some style? Why, you know, you can go right down the list of
Hmm.
all those things, right? Like
Yeah,
be the guy that she wants.
it almost makes them keep their standard for themselves higher.
Right.
Yeah, because so many times you get married and then everybody gains some weight and they stop trying, and then the women clearly are going to practice that hypergamy and look for something better because that man is no longer serving what they want.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a multifaceted puzzle. Like it's not just one piece. Like sometimes people focus too much on the money aspect of it, but women just don't focus on money. Like they actually have to be attracted to a guy, you know, despite the whole body positivity movement. There's a reason
Yeah.
why there's no chubby chaser dating sites for women looking for fat guys. They don't exist.
Well,
Right.
they're all trying to do this whole dad bod thing and get on that game. I'm not about that. Like, who?
There's loads of women that'll be interviewed publicly on a, you know, like a YouTube channel or on a news station being asked about dad bods, and they'll say, oh yeah, that's cute, that's sexy, yeah, I love dad bods. But
Yeah,
watch what they choose. Like when they go to the nightclub, they're going out with the rock hard fireman, right?
right, right. But are they marrying the fireman?
Sometimes they're dating the dad bod guy and marrying him because he's got the money. So that's the alpha seed beta need equation of women's dating strategy, right? It's
Yeah,
dualistic because of their cycles.
yeah. So interesting. All this shit like just fascinates me, and I got into this because I wanted to understand men better and figure out how to support them. Like obviously this is a dual, this takes men and women to figure out and actually work together on. Um
Yeah,
one
it does, but I mean, like it really needs the man to lead the equation. Like if the guy's not unplugged, like if he's a, you know, if he's a blue pill beta sort of thing,
Mhm.
you guys can want to work on it as much as you can, but what ends up happening is you end up working on him, and then you find out that it doesn't go anywhere, and he's not getting to the point where you want him to, and then you get bored and you kind of move on from it, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it really starts with the guy. Like it it really truly does start with him wanting to be the leader, wanting to, you know, procure this information and fix the chaos that's gone on in his life. And then this usually what leads guys to stuff like this. You know, like I mentioned earlier when you were asking how, you know, how I got into this, it's because of chaos in my own life. And it's usually you know, that sequence of bad decisions, you know, the chaos, whether it's girl cheats on you, divorce, it usually ties around with women.
Hmm.
Then that's when you go looking for the information, and then you're like, okay, now it's time for me to take responsibility for all this stuff. Let's, you know, let's build back better, as our friend Mr. Biden would say.
Right.
Only you're not building back a better beta, you're actually ending that beta version of yourself, and you're unplugging from all the bullshit, and then you become the unplugged alpha.
Yeah. And I encourage women to do that. So I host retreats for women to do the same thing, to kind of find their femininity again.
Hmm.
Um,
What do you teach them?
so we do the retreats and we come in and we do boudoir pictures. Like women forget to dress up, to feel sexy, like not just for their man, but for themselves, because when they feel sexy, then they actually want to have sex.
Hmm.
And like it just, it catapults into so many different areas of their lives. Then they realize, okay, now I'm worth it. I need to start working out. I need to, you know, do stuff with my kids. And just the transformations that I've seen with these women based off of a weekend. Um, it's pretty cool. But
So I mean,
there's
like
a
you
lot of
start
them.
immediately with the optics of femininity and beauty by putting them in scantily clad clothing and taking photographs.
Yeah,
That's probably the right place to start, to be honest with you.
yeah. And well, and we're taught that that's not okay, which I think is bullshit. Like
Yeah.
we no longer feel sexy. Okay, well then we're only wearing our sweats around,
Do you know
and
where
it's
that
just
comes from?
no, no.
Toxic feminism. It tells women to never do anything for the express pleasure of men. Don't look beautiful,
Yeah, that
don't
makes
dress
sense.
beautiful, don't put on makeup, don't do dinner, don't do the dishes, make sure
Right.
he does half of everything, blah, blah, blah. So that entire, you know, societal narrative comes from women's belief that they should never really do anything for the pleasure of men. But the truth of the matter is, women don't fall in love with guys when they're doing things for them. They fall in love with guys when women are doing things for the guy.
Yes. Yes.
That's when you lose yourself in yourself, sort of thing. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing all these things for this guy. I've never done that before for anybody else.
So that's interesting that you that the scantily clad pictures doesn't bother you. I wondered what you would think about that.
No, that's the right place to start. Is, you know, do you look hot? Do you compliment his life? Can you feed him? You know, believe it or not, you know, women completely underestimate the value of culinary skills. It's like it was mandatory in my mom's grandmother's, you know, like you go back through the you know, that side of the family, and it was like if you didn't know how to cook, you were useless. Right. So looking beautiful is one part of the equation, but can you feed the man? I mean, because, you know, he's supposed to be out, you know, getting the bacon and bringing it home so you can cook it.
Right. Yeah. He's hunting. I love that. And what's cool at the retreats that I do, when we come together with these women, we do a lot of coaching for that weekend as well. And we talk about the problems. They're all having the same common problems, but a lot of it is these women are not letting their men lead. They're trying to replace them. I mean, it just goes on. And I was there too. But being able to bring them together and be like, look, this is what's actually happening. And this is how you stop that. Like, start being more feminine, start doing things for him, start being who you were.
The problem with that, though, is it's only a short-term solution. It makes him feel good over a short-term basis, but she's going to grow to resent him because of that, because he's not going to get to the point that she wants him to get to. So she just can't be more feminine, look hot in, you know, lingerie sort of thing, and be more interested in him and available sexually. He actually has to be the guy that she wants to be attracted to. And it's the guys, again, it's the guys that need to lead. It's the guys that need to go to the boot camp first. I mean, there should also be a boot camp for women if that's something that, you know, you find value in. But it's really like it starts with the guy, right? Like he has to play the role. Like he has to play the role of the man.
Right. Yeah.
So if he's just sitting there watching sports with Cheeto dust on his beard, still overweight, still incompetent, things still broken all over the house, there's a flat tire and an engine light on in the car, she's still like, she can put on as many hot clothes as she wants and make him whatever it is that he likes to eat. But if he's sitting there doing the exact same thing that he was doing before she went to your retreat and did the sexy photo shoot, guess where those photos are going? It's going to go to the guy after she divorces him that she's trying to pick up on the dating app. Hey, check me out.
That hits pretty close to home. Yeah. Why do you think that men get there? Why do you think that they get betatized?
Because they let themselves. Because women will competency test men, and men will go through betatization through 1,000 concessions. I talked about an interesting scenario in my book, which is a real life scenario that I saw in a grocery store, you know, myself, where there's a guy and he's in the baby aisle with diapers and baby food, and he looks beaten down. Like his face he just looks like a can of smashed assholes. Like he's had the worst life ever. And he's got a screaming kid in the buggy, another one in the basket, the wife's pregnant, sort of thing. And she's yelling at him, telling him what an idiot he is because he put the wrong diapers in the buggy. Right. And it's like, how do you get there? It's like death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's betatization through 1,000 concessions. And it starts with, and by the way, it's the same guy that has the barbed wire tattoo around his arm. Right. Like, I'm guessing you're close to the same age as me. So like that was a popular tattoo for men, you know, back in the day when I was a kid. So he's that same guy. Like he was a badass guy that probably rode motorcycles, had a muscle car. She loved him to bits, would give him all the monkey sex hanging from the chandeliers and blah, blah, blah sort of thing. And then, you know, 15 years later, he's this beta in a shopping cart, you know, in the grocery store looking like he wants to kill himself sort of thing. So, you know, it's just a sequence of bad choices and, you know, bad leadership on the guy's part. I don't think that you can blame women for it, although women do play a part in the equation.
We do. We test men. I think that's what, when you talk about like the way of the superior man, we will constantly test a man. And if he moves that goalpost just a little bit each time, that's where he'll eventually just be given into whatever you want.
And those tests disappear and start to go away when she realizes that there's no need to shit test you. The only reason why she's shit testing guys is because it's a competency test. She wants to know that this guy can take care of shit, because 1,000 years ago, if she didn't pair bond with a competent guy, it would spell certain death for her and her kids at some point. So she had to make sure that she was with a competent guy. So that's why they shit test men. But most guys fail because they're told to be the nice guy, just do what she says. Happy wife, happy life.
Oh
That's
God,
like,
yeah.
the worst lyric that guys, regurgitate all the time. She's my better half,
Yeah.
like, come on, guys.
Oh. And so that's another thing that I talk to my girls about in coaching is that you are not your man's whole world and you shouldn't be. Like he should have his own thing going on and you got to stay busy. There's so many women who, check the phones and get crazy when it comes to wanting his attention all the time. And then when they get it, obviously that's clearly not what they want. But
right.
I don't know how we switch this in our society, because that's where so many problems run from is the betatization and the testing, and everybody just, okay, we're just going to cave. Everything's going to be whatever you say, darling,
Yeah, and it turns it into segregation of the sexes where women don't want to deal with men, right? And men don't want to deal with women. And it's
Dude,
like,
okay, that MGTOW that you were talking about,
right.
I'd never heard that before.
Mm-hmm.
So that stands for men going their own way.
Yeah, and there's a female acronym of WGTOW, which is women going their own way now too.
Oh, Jesus.
Well, and I mean, like the interesting thing about that is the vast majority of these guys don't select this path in life. Like they're not choosing to go their own way. They're actually sent their own way. It's,
okay.
It's like they're not competitive in the sexual marketplace and they're invisible to women. So they say, well, I'm just going to take my toys and march off over here and play in this corner. Whereas women are just like, we don't care, do whatever you want, sort of thing, right? Because we're not even looking at you. Right. There's a very small part of the MGTOW, community where guys are actually like just not dealing with women, even though they're attractive and they're competent, all that sort of stuff, because they've been through enough. Very rare, but for the most part, it's guys like being sent their own way.
Wow. And so they've completely given up on the opposite sex.
Are they not
celibate?
really, because they're involuntarily celibate, where they would like to be with women. Like the common trope is, I'm funny, I'm smart, I have a pretty good job. I don't understand why women don't like me, right? And it's like, and then you look at them and they're fat with a neck beard and they play video games all the time and they're not influential, they're boring, they don't have anything interesting going on in their lives. Of course women don't want anything to do with you. I mean, your $40,000 a year job at Walmart is not going to cut it for most women today.
Right. And the dating apps make that imbalance quite clear. Like there are so many men on there and just a little bit of women are the ones who actually are getting the attention, I think, that are giving the attention to those men.
Right. Yeah. It's, I think the swiping habits, and I talked about this in my books as well, is that women swipe right on, 80% of women swipe right on 20% of men.
Right.
Which is why the highest value men throughout history have always generally dated or maintained multiple women in their lives, right? So whether you call it a harem or whatever that may be, depending on where you live in the world. So there's another old trope too, where women would rather share a high value alpha than be straddled with a faithful loser.
Wow. Do you feel like that's still true today?
It is, because multiple women will be okay with sharing a super high value guy and they'll just look the other way. There's a ton of different ways to break that dynamic down and how it goes. But one of the great tragedies of men's lives, and women will never appreciate this, like one of the problems that guys have is they want women to love them in a way that they want to be loved, but they don't understand that women only love them so long as they're useful, right? Like it's the whole, who was it, Chris Rock, that said it in his tambourine stand-up? Only women, children, and dogs are loved unconditionally. Men are only loved under the condition that they provide something.
Right.
So like one of the great tragedies, there's a lot of good-looking, high-value men. I mean, you probably see them at like the Sean Whalen, type of events. Yeah. Tall guys, tatted up, lots of money, successful, smoking their cigars. They own a bunch of guns, blah, 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 sort of thing. And then they've got this girlfriend sort of thing. And they don't understand their real true value and strength in the sexual marketplace, right? And some of these women, they don't really appreciate these guys. Like, they're a little rough on them. They try to put them through betatization, but it's like, if you're a high value guy that's monogamous to a chick that's generally of lower value than you, because women are hypergamous, they only date across and up,
Mhm.
you'd think that they'd be a little more appreciative, right? I mean, but try to get that message through to guys to help them understand what their true value is. They don't want to hear it.
Hmm. So women always marry up. Do men? I know
Not
you talk a lot
always.
of,
Not
well,
always. Like, there are a
the
few
same are
women
up.
that will date or marry down, where it's like he's a stay-at-home dad and she goes to work, but she's not really happy. Like, you can try to,
No.
convince people that you're happy with that equation. She'd rather be at home with the kids, doing what women are better at doing, and she'd rather have him at work bringing home the bacon. But yeah, generally speaking, more often than not, women would prefer to mate select men that are either at their level or higher. Like, you've probably heard with your girlfriends, like, I just at least want a guy that's at my level. Like, I don't want to date somebody that's broke. I don't want somebody with debt. He doesn't make enough money, sort of thing. He's hot, but he doesn't make enough money, right? Well, she'll use him for short-term dating because he's hot, but that's like the alpha seed side of the equation. But then she's only going to settle for a guy that's at her level financially.
Now with men, how did they normally go? Is they normally go younger, or you don't see men going for
generally
better?
don't care. Like, I have a friend. There's an old joke going around. I have a friend, like, when he comes over, the fish stop swimming. Because they're afraid that they're going to get hit on, sort of thing. Men will go for just about anything, but generally speaking, the things that men prefer is youth and beauty. So a 23-year-old woman it doesn't matter how hot a 40-year-old chick is, she just can't compete with a 23-year-old hottie, not even close. So youth and beauty is what men prize. And by the way, that's not just in Western culture, that's throughout the entire world, throughout history. When surveyed, I think it was men between the ages of 19 and 75 were asked what demographic of women are the most beautiful, and they're shown pictures in their culture of women in that demographic. They universally select 22 to 23-year-old women.
Wow. So then, why do you think that some men go for the older women? Is that do they have like
Lack of
mommy
options,
issues?
low-hanging fruit, mommy issues. It's usually lack of options and low-hanging fruit. It's not often that you'll find a high value man that's successful, that's tall, good looking, has his shit together, that's like, oh, I want to date a 70-year-old. Whenever you see those things show up on like those TV shows, the reality shows, it's always some 30-year-old dork that lives with his mom that starts dating a 7-year-old woman that's basically like a sugar mama that pays for his video games, right?
Yeah, they're not having sex at all. Oh man. Okay. Do you have any other books that you're working on? Like, what are topics that you're really?
I'm working on a follow-up to that book, and the way that I'm really doing it is I'm using my podcast as a platform for that. So on YouTube, again, it's on its own channel, so I'll plug it again. It's the Unplugged Alpha podcast, and there's a topic that starts each show. Then I take some call-ins as well. So all of that is really helping me build on the second version of the book. So I've already written a few of the chapters. I'm a slow writer. I'm more of like a video creator. But what I like to do is take my best material that I've put out in podcast and video form and then distill it in a book.
Nice. What I'm excited for that. What is like when you take these call in from the guys, what's the biggest issue that you see from the men? The most common issue?
The most common issue is what they're usually asking about is, how do I get the girls up? it's how do I date? How do I keep her in my frame? How do I get her back? She cheated on me. Should I take her back because she cheated on me? She's older than me. Should I date her? She's got kids. Should I marry her? It's like, it's just a sequence of really bad decisions and inviting chaos into their life. And it's because they don't have their heads, screwed on right. Like, they haven't got themselves squared away when it comes to the unplugging process. And they subscribe to old world notions that don't serve guys, that end up getting them destroyed, right? Which is what leads to things like MGTOW and checking out of the sexual marketplace, and crazy, like events where you see these mass shootings now, right? Like, every single one of these mass shootings that you'll see, if you go back in history over the last 20 years, the shooter is almost always male, disgruntled, not very good looking, from a single mother household, couldn't get girls, and takes out his, frustrations on a bunch of kids in school, usually, or something like that.
Right. Right. That's where things have just gotten so out of control. Like we need our men to step up and be fucking men. And
Yeah. And the problem is that everything in society today is taking men away from that.
mhm,
It starts in the school system, right? Like when I was a kid, here in Toronto, the playground would freeze in the wintertime. So any puddles overnight would freeze into ice. And one of the things we would do is we'd take a long run up to it and see how far we could slide across it and kind of like flip on the other end or something like that. Kids aren't allowed to do something like that today
no.
because they don't want the school board to get sued or a kid to get injured. They got to deal with medical bills and issues and stuff like that. So I mean, that's just one example,
Mhm.
but you can go to TV. Like everything in TV shows now betatizes men. Like every TV commercial, every sitcom, the guy is made out to look like a bumbling fool. Like when I was a kid, I used to watch Home Improvement, the Cosby Show, stuff
Yeah.
like that. And the men in those shows were always made out to be completely incompetent retards. And the women
Mhm.
were like these heroes, and the children would make fun of the father. So it's like, and you wonder why today there's a lack of strong masculine male role models out there.
That's a huge part of it. And I think a lot of kids, young boys especially, don't know what it feels like to get punched in the face.
Right, because you're not allowed to fight in the
Some
school ground
violence.
anymore. Yeah.
Right.
Violence is extremely important. I mean, it's one of the things I talk about in my book is that women want a competent guy that know how to fight.
Mhm. And it's not allowed. Like even if a kid defends himself, he's still going to get in trouble. So now what are you teaching him? Well, don't defend yourself either. Like just stand there and take it.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Okay, so one of the things that you did talk about was the notch count and
Mhm.
virginity.
Yeah.
Um, I thought it was really interesting to look back, even in my life and other women that I know, like when did they start having sex and how that impacts maybe how many partners they have, how they just kind of jumped from man to man because that's what they've done since they were 14.
Mhm.
Why do you think that the virginity age impacts that?
Well, it's not a guess or anything. It's based on science, really. I mean, because we know, statistically speaking, the older a woman is that she loses her virginity, and the lower the number of male partners that she's had, the more likely she is to be happy and want to stay in a long-term marriage. Like a woman that's been with 100 guys, 50 guys, 25 guys is much less likely to be able to form a pair bond with a guy than a woman that's a virgin or has only been with one or two guys. And
Right.
a woman that lost her virginity at 13 or 14 is less likely to be a good long-term partner than a woman that lost her virginity at 23. Those are facts, statistically speaking. So I mean, like when I talk to guys, like one of the first questions, if I get a guy that's on the horn and he wants to talk about, I'm not sure about her, should I marry her, sort of thing, like, we're engaged and there's these problems, sort of thing. It's like, okay, what's her sexual past like, right? Like, is this really good wife stock? Because if she's been with a whole bunch of guys and she lost her virginity at a very young age, the chances of you getting divorced are exceptionally high. And what does that mean?
Right.
If you have kids, you're barely going to see them, generally speaking. If you've got high net worth, you're going to lose a good chunk of it, right? So why would you want to put yourself in that risky, situation?
Right. And the women, if they're losing their virginity at 14, aren't going to value themselves or anything else. They're just going to, I don't, just looking back, I was raised Mormon, so super religious, and like sex wasn't even in the question until much later. But now I'm like, damn, maybe that was really beneficial for me because there was a value put on virginity. There was a value put on the girls, especially like saving things for marriage.
Well, there's a reason why the prize when Arabs go to, the afterlife, whatever, is 70 virgins and not a Mercedes or a Ferrari.
Right. But do you really want 70 virgins? I don't know. I don't know. Oh, there was another thing that you talked about, controlling the birth. Okay. I'd heard somebody else say it as like control your sperm, like know where your sperm is going kind of thing.
Yeah.
And with my son, like I think that's really important. Women can be so manipulative when it comes to trapping a man with a kid, whether
Mhm.
they're like on the pill, maybe they're having a fight with their boyfriends if they take the wrong pill on accident, and all of a sudden, whoop, we're pregnant, and now you have to stick around forever. Controlling the birth is huge, and taking control of
it's really just taking ownership for your sperm, because once it leaves your body, you don't have any decision making capacity whatsoever. It all falls on her.
right.
So again, it's like, why would you want to risk yourself to that exposure? A lot of what I talk about is about risk management, right? Inviting the right kind of woman in your life. If you have, the right kind of woman in your life, or you're dating a woman, how are you going to deal with her sexually? How far in your life are you going to invite her? She can be kept at arm's length, and it just doesn't deal with women. Like, I talk to a lot of guys about money, finance, and creating wealth and businesses. Like, I have a course on building your own business sort of stuff. So a lot of it is about risk management, right? And when it comes to controlling the birth, it's like, guys, I get it. You want to have sex. You're a man. You're placed on this earth to scatter seed. We all are here for the same reason. I understand that. But if you're going to go about that in life, make sure you're in control of what happens to your seed when it leaves your body.
Yeah, because there's so many consequences down the line if you don't.
They're far too severe for a man to be frivolously just going where he wants with his seed.
Yeah. Oh, do you have any red flags in men? Talk about the red flags in women. What are the type of men that women should avoid if we want to?
Okay, so since your audience is primarily female, let's see if we can touch on that. I don't generally talk to very many women. Like 95% of my viewers is male. And the women that do watch, they're kind of like you. They just want to be a fly on the wall to see how things work, sort of thing. They want to understand, the mechanics behind the scene. So I don't think women need to worry about that much, if I'm being honest, because they're inherently predisposed to only allow the best that they can get into their life because of their hypergamous nature. So if the guy's broke, she's probably going to dismiss him pretty fast. If he's got loads of debt, if he's obese, if he's incompetent, right? Now, if he's hot and she gives him, and he gives her the Gina tingles, she'll bang him, like she'll sleep with him, but it's only on a short-term basis. She's not going to want to marry him. She might get knocked up by that guy, and then she ends up finding some beta guy to raise that other man's son, sort of thing. So it's the whole sexy son theory. You can Google sexy son and you'll see loads of information about that. But women only want the gene of a sexy man. So they're happy to take on the broke loser who might be hot, but then have some other guy raise that kid with his financial resources and parental investment. That's just an old Evo psych thing.
Yeah. Crazy. One of the things that I tell my girls in coaching is if they're dating, to make a list of all the things they want in a partner, and then become those things that kind of partner would want. Like, you want like a man with a six-pack, you can't be overweight,
Yeah. And that's difficult because women will compose a very long list of requirements that they look for in a man, but they won't agree to his list of requirements, from his side of the equation.
Double standard there.
Then he'll be called a misogynist or sexist or a woman hater, sort of thing like that. And it's like, like a woman can be like, I want a guy that's tall, sexy, wealthy. He's got at least this in the pants, a six-pack abs. He's got to have a 700 horsepower car, no kids, a house like this is paid off, blah, blah. And then a dude will come along and be like, I like a girl with nice boobs. And she'll be like, misogynist, sexist, I hate you. Why do you hate women so much? Who hurt you? Right. And it's like, men are not allowed to express their preferences today. Like Jordan Peterson a few weeks ago got in a lot of trouble because he shared a picture of that Cosmo cover with she wasn't morbidly obese, but let's just say she wasn't a healthy weight, pretty face, but not a healthy weight. And he said, this isn't beautiful. And they lost their ever loving mind on him because of that. Right. So, a woman can go all over social media today and talk about what her preferences are. We saw it on Kevin Samuels. Did you ever watch that show?
I don't think so.
There's loads and loads of videos where, and he primarily dealt with the Black demographic, but these overly entitled bratty women that would call in and basically say, I want a top shelf man. And then he would basically look at her and be, yeah, but you're average at best, right? Like you're not even special. So why do you think you're going to get that guy? So to your point of red flags to women. So we already know that women are going to automatically mate select the best that they can get because of their hypergamous nature. So I think that women should probably put some thought and consideration in updating their beliefs around requirements and what they're going to need to make some concessions on, right? Because one of the conversations, like I've been challenged on this before, because I've said that, you know, women are happy to share a high value man, and they'd rather do that than be straddled with a faithful loser. And then they automatically go, well, Rich, what are you going to tell your daughter then if, you know, she's, you know, if she finds a guy that's, you know, cheating on her? I would tell her the exact same thing. If you've chosen a high value guy, you're going to have to be prepared to look the other way if he's going to go out and have some fun while he's on a business trip or something like that. Right. And just be okay with it. Right. And that's a difficult pill for a lot of women to swallow. And they're like, I'm not going to have that. I'm just going to move on because that's not right. And sort of things. Like, okay, well, there's some guys that will choose to be monogamous, and there's others that will, you know, choose a different path. Right. And if you want that high value guy, again, you know, we already know today, statistically speaking, something like 30 or 33% of men are completely sexless. Like, they're not being intimate. But I bet that you and your listeners right now would be hard pressed to find a woman in their audience or in their social circle that's not having sex with a guy. So guess what? There's multiple women having sex with one guy.
Oh, I see what you're saying. The numbers don't really add up like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the misconceptions I think people get when they listen to your stuff is that, oh, well, we're just supposed to let all men cheat and nobody's monogamous. Like, I think it's different for different people. Some guys may want to be monogamous and just have one woman, and some may not. But to be
it's got to be a
about
choice.
that, yeah.
But it's got to be a choice. And again, I mean, given the choice for a guy, I think most guys would choose to do whatever they want, spread their seed, sort of thing, right? Mm-hmm. Some guys will choose to be monogamous, which is fine as well. But women have to, if they want to have a good relationship with a man, be okay with what a man is.
So I'm curious what you think about like the swingers and how that works, because that's both the man and the woman going outside, maybe together, but they're going outside of their relationship.
See, women can't comfortably have multiple partners. I've had this conversation a number of times, and it's like, you know, women will say, well, if he's going to go out and have a bunch of fun, then I'm going to do it too. And okay, now you're talking about a poly relationship, and that's not generally how they work out. It's usually like an average looking woman, like a 5, that ends up with 2 or 3 dorks in her life. And then she'll go out on the weekend while they're staying home looking after her kid, and she's banging the Chad in the bathroom at the nightclub, sort of thing. So it's not how it usually works out. Like, women think that they can have a bunch of hot guys in the rotation, but throughout history, men have run harems, right? Like, the most successful, wealthiest men throughout history have always had multiple women in their lives. There's no example throughout history that I'm aware of where women ran harems of men. Doesn't exist. Women make 1 seed per month. Eggs are expensive. Men make millions of seeds every day, right? Sperm is cheap.
So I'm trying to think, like, I know a lot of people who are getting into the whole swingers thing, and I think that's a good way for the man to have the options and for her to be okay with it. But women are different with sex.
Yeah, truthfully, no, because I mean, I wouldn't want my girl to be getting D'd down by some other dude, because I know what I do in the bedroom.
But what about another chick?
Another chick doing what?
Like, if you and your girl bring in another chick, are you against that?
No, that's a different thing completely.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, because men and women get jealous for different reasons. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this concept.
Well, so just imagining, like, it's almost like the whole cuckold thing. Like, imagine having another man inside your woman, like, that's a possessive thing.
But there's guys that actually enjoy that. Like, I have a friend of mine. He's a bull. He's a Nigerian bodybuilder. He's huge, natural guy, and he gets called in to be a bull in these relationships where the nerd sits in the corner while he rearranges her guts on their bed, and he just sits there and takes it. Wow. So Yeah, there's that cuckold notion, and I think that women like that, and there's a demographic of men that also enjoy that too, where they'll talk about that part of their life, which to me is bizarre. It's not natural. I'm
Not
see
masculine, that's for sure.
it's certainly not masculine. It's not like masculine men that are sitting in the corner watching him do what he's doing. It's always losers, it's always nerds, it's always lower value guys, right? And they do it to sort of placate her, to keep her happy. And it's like she gets exactly what she wants. She has the loser pay for everything, while this guy comes in every once in a while and, you know, gives her a hard time walking the next day. And that works out great in that relationship for everybody involved, because they're all happy at the end of the day, right?
Right.
But I mean, the truth of the matter is that women can't be promiscuous and have multiple partners and happily pair bond to a guy. And if you look at the swinger scene, for the most part, like I've dated a couple of women that were into that and were like openly bi sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
They were the better looking ones of the group. But when you start to kind of dive into their scene, most of the people in that environment, they're not very good looking. They're kind of gross.
I agree.
Right. So it's like, I don't know. I mean, if that's where you want to go and that's how you want to, you know, spend your time, I don't really care. Just don't bother me.
Right. Well, and if a couple, like on a 1 to 10, if they're a 5, of course they're going to go with other people that may not be so great. But if you're a high value, good looking man and woman in a relationship, like you're probably not going to find that equal or anywhere close to where you're at in the swingers
Right.
realm, you know. Interesting.
Because I mean, like at the end of the day, if you're a guy and your bedroom game is top shelf, she doesn't want any other guy. Truthfully, right. Like other guys are invisible to her if he's great in the bedroom. That's just the reality of it. So, you know, the only reason why she wants to bang other guys is because you're not top shelf G, right?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Do you believe that successful monogamy is possible nowadays with an alpha?
It's possible, but it's difficult because men are being tested by women. Like, is he the best that I can do? And women's test, like a man's test of loyalty comes when he's successful. A woman's test of loyalty comes when a man is unsuccessful, right? So they're, again, two opposing things, right?
Right.
He becomes a loser in that relationship. She's going to start looking for an exit plan and a better guy, especially if they have kids. You know, there's a whole bunch of different things that fall in the equation. The other part of the thing is too is his test of loyalty comes when he's successful. Is he going to stay loyal to her or not? Because he's going to get hit on. I mean, if he's a good looking guy, he's competent, he's tall, he's successful. Women love married guys. There's a reason why women go for married guys. It's like pre-selection exists. He's already been chosen by someone, reproduced with someone, and now she sees that and she's thinking to herself, oh, well, this guy's proven himself. Why don't I go and see what's going on over here? And let me see if I can, you know, like, you know, it's why it's called home wrecking, right?
Yeah, it's a challenge, and let me test, you know, how faithful is he really?
Yeah, and how many women are prepared to look the other way if he's indiscriminate? Not a lot, right? Like they'll go and divorce him and take half his shit and think, you know, that the grass is greener on the other side when they find it really isn't.
Right. Yeah. No, the dating world it's what you make of it, but it's hard to find good quality men out there for sure.
They're out there.
They're probably not on Tinder though.
They're probably not on Tinder. And if they are, they're probably dating a bunch of women, and you're going to have to prove yourself to them. Like, honestly, like, you know, like another difficulty that women have is being okay with a guy dating a bunch of other women. And it's like, you know, she's going to find out about it because women love to be private investigators. They'll take a look at the mirror and they'll see if there's fingerprints on there that aren't hers. They'll look at, you know, the glass shower door. They'll look in the garbage. They'll notice a hair that's not theirs. Yeah. Oh yeah. Right. So when women discover that he's dating other women, then they want to claim him. Right. It's like, where do we stand, sort of thing. And the guys that I talk to, like, I'll just tell them straight up, like, if you don't know her and you've only been dating her for a short while, you're going to need to be a player. Like, if you want to have a girlfriend, you're going to have to date a bunch of women to find, you know, the best one out of the bunch. If you're looking for mother stock, because you want to have kids, you're going to have to be a player so that you can sort the wheat from the chaff. You have to know what gold looks like versus fool's gold. You're going to have to dig through a lot of dirt to find gold, sort of thing. And a lot of women get upset when high value guys date other women. And it's like, no, you're actually going to have to be okay with that. You're going to have to compete with the other women for his attention and show him that you're the better choice, right?
Yeah. How many men get married to the first person that they have sex with?
Most of
And
them. Most of them do.
Yeah.
She
And then
smelled
they're
nice and she touched my pee-pee, so I married her, right? Like that's kind of what they do.
and then down the road, they're thinking like, shit, like what else is out there? What did I miss out on? What did, I settled for this. I'm happy with this, happy, quote unquote. But they're always going to wonder what else is out there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think women do the same thing though. Not saying that they need to go and sleep around, but at least date around and figure out what you want and what it's going to take to get that.
Right. But I mean, like the downside to that, and, again, that's where there's different advice that I give to women is you don't want to sleep around with a bunch of guys, right? Like if you've been in the dating scene and you've been single and you've dated a bunch of guys, and me or any guys that I've talked to catch wind of a large notch count, it's like, you're not mother stock. You're automatically disqualified. You're probably not girlfriend stock. You're automatically disqualified. Right. So yeah, it's a totally different game. It's like, well, Rich, aren't you ruining the sexual marketplace if you tell guys to sleep with a bunch of women and women not to sleep with a bunch of guys, sort of thing? It's like, no, you think that my tiny little influence is going to have any impact on the sexual marketplace with a few million views?
All of a
There's
sudden,
billions of people. Like
everything flips.
Like I'm the Dalai Lama that's going to fix the world for you. Women are
Right.
already promiscuous. They're already sleeping with a bunch of guys, right? They already have a large notch count. So if the men that I'm talking to, telling them to date a bunch of women so, they can figure out what's good from bad, and they happen to sleep with a few of them, hey, this to me is women's choice, right? They've been telling women for a long time. I mean, it all started with the advent of hormonal birth control, right? Like that's when the first wave of feminism hit, and women were just like, now we can have sex as much as we want and never get pregnant. And it's like, okay, well, that's where it started. And I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing or it's anybody's fault. I'm just saying that it's a fact of life.
Well, I think the hormonal birth control actually fucked a lot of things up for women more than that. Like it messes with our pheromones. So therefore, like we are attracted to someone completely different than we should be.
100%. Right. Yeah. And if you're dating a guy and you're on birth control and you get married, you're generally looking for the beta male when you're on birth control. And then you get married and then you come off birth control to have kids and you get pregnant, you have kids and your hormones are doing this stuff, the whole time, sort of thing. And then one day you come to the realization, this guy isn't even that hot. What happened? Right? Because you're off birth control now. And now, your hormones are balanced and everything's fine. All of a sudden you've got a couple kids. And then she's like, well, that guy over there looks nice. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think that's a huge problem. And if you're telling men to control the birth, like the women should do the same thing, but don't get on birth control. I would stick to condoms or get your tubes tied. Like don't do the pull-out method either.
Yeah. The whole tubes tied thing is used to be popular, but I think now it's switched completely where they're pointing at men saying, well, you get your nuts snipped.
Yeah. And
I don't know. I've only met one woman in my entire life that had her tubes tied.
Oh,
I've met loads of guys that have had a vasectomy though.
Well, so as soon as I got divorced, I knew I didn't want to have any more kids. My kids were older and I didn't want to be talked into having kids from anybody. So like 3 months after that, like I got my tubes tied and I'm done. Like there's no going back on that. But how many times does that happen where, oh, okay, I don't want any more kids. Oh, but I do. Oh, okay. And then there's resentment and there's enough to have multiple baby daddies. Like that's not what I'm about. But,
it's more common than you think.
Yeah. And it's awful for these kids when they're talking about like, oh, is that your brother? Well, it's my half brother. And then this one's got a different dad. And you're dealing with how many different step parents and families. And, But I think a lot of that's also based off of, it comes down to the divorce, and some women use men to have multiple children with, so they have multiple paychecks and child support.
There's these short videos that I've seen going around where women encourage other women to have multiple baby daddies because the paycheck is higher. Like they actually compare it on the screen, and they'll be like, if you have 3 kids with one man, this is what you get. If you have 3 kids with 3 different men, you get this, girls. And it's like, why don't you go this rate? So it's like, like you ask why society is dysfunctional and why men are weak. And you can also point at the laws, because legislation has been created by government, by the state, to essentially encourage women to have multiple kids from multiple different men. Like there's a financial incentive to them to do that.
Right. And I don't understand why that legislation would be passed. Like, what is the benefit for society?
They want a weak society, because a weak and stupid society is easier to control than a strong one.
True. Very true. Oh, what a mess. Well, thank you so much for your time today and for going through all of this stuff. I think that everybody should read your book. I think that everybody should listen to your podcast. And this is, we can all be better. A lot of this comes down to integrity and just being a better person and expecting better of others too, raising your standard. So,
thanks, Leandra.
Thank you so much, Rich.
Appreciate it.
Have a good day.
Thanks.